Hey there, and welcome to Marriage Talks, a real, authentic, and relatable podcast about how to thrive in your marriage.
Here you will find helpful information shaped by a biblical worldview on all things marriage related, sex, money, parenting, and so much more. We are Michael and Elizabeth Ann, and welcome to the show.
Yeah, welcome to today's show. Before we dive into today's content, we want to tell you that this episode is sponsored by the Marriage Talks Patreon page. And in that Patreon page, you will find different tiers of perks, which is really great for you. And the great thing about supporting the show is that it really helps us further the ministry of the Marriage Talks podcast. So thank you so much. And the link will be in the show notes. And if you have not rated or reviewed,
Do it.
definitely do that because we love those. We read them. They are the best.
It feeds our ego.
No, it's great feedback because it lets us know that you're enjoying the show. And that really is very special to us. So thank you to those who have. And if you haven't, go do it.
Yep. And of course, it helps us to be found on all the podcasting lists and apps. So thanks for sharing, guys.
Yeah.
All right. So we are talking about expectations, and I'm calling this episode Great Expectations because that's a famous book that I've never read and never will. But everybody has their own set of expectations when they come into their marriage. Whether you realize it or not, they are there and they are deep inside you.
Yeah.
So it's important to kind of unearth those, and that's what we're going to kind of explore today. We'll share some of ours, get a little vulnerable. It wouldn't be a Marriage Talks podcast without a little vulnerability from your wonderful hosts here.
Sharing like our actual examples.
Yeah. Which is not a natural thing for me, but after like 50 plus episodes, I'm getting pretty comfortable with it.
Well, before we dive into like kind of the nitty gritty of the episode, we do want to like define what an expectation is because I think we use the word a lot. But I know for me, like a lot of words that I use quite often, I'm like, but what does that actually mean? So I think defining words is really important and super helpful. So an expectation is a strong belief that something will happen or be the case in the future.
And I always chuckle a little bit when we're putting together our show notes or our script for the show. It's like, oh, you're doing another Webster's. And she's like, yeah, it's really good to set it off and start it up because... And I laughed, but I was like, it's true because you do want to actually have that official version. It's like, what are we working off of?
Yeah.
Not just like, what is your idea of an expectation, but like, what is it legit?
Well, I've fallen in love with it because of Bible study. Because like every Monday I go to a Bible study with other women and we really dig deep into the word. And so defining words and getting down to the root of what it means because, there's some verbiage that we don't use now. And what did it mean in that time? Contextually, what does that mean? And so defining words and really getting to the root of what it is that you're talking about is super important. So it just kind of is a habit that I think carried on to our show.
That's a good habit.
But it's a good habit. So
yeah, so that's a really good for Bible reading, but you can honestly put that in for like anything that you're studying to try to learn more about too.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool.
So now that we know what an expectation is.
So why should you talk about your expectations?
Ooh, we could give you a whole list, but we'll stick to a few.
Yeah, this will be a normal length episode, and you're welcome. First off, I'm gonna let you start it off since that's kind of next one is kind of her thing. She talks about this a lot.
Okay. I love to do spoiler alerts as if they're really spoiler
there's
alerts.
about 3 to 5 every time now.
But here's a spoiler alert. Your spouse is not a mind reader. They cannot read your mind. And yet we treat them like they're mind readers. I cannot tell you how many times a day I'm like, oh, Michael, just read my mind. It'll be fine. We'll be fine.
She still does that, and I've never read her mind yet.
I don't know why is it taking you so long? Haven't you figured it out yet?
I left my crystal ball at the train station. I don't know.
So your spouse is not a mind reader. They have no idea what you're thinking. It could be plain as day and they will miss it because it's happened a bajillion times for us. And I know it has happened a bajillion times for you. Let's not let history repeat itself. I think the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different outcome. Guys, let's stop being insane, please. And I'm saying that to myself. Michael's not a mind reader. He cannot tell what I'm thinking. I just have to tell him. No, I'm not going to talk down to him and just be like, but you should know this. Like, No, just say, hey, this is kind of where my head's at, or like, this is what I'm thinking, or, just letting him know what it is that's on my mind as far as an expectation, or, being very clear about it. When we start to just talk around the subject or fill it with other words or basically make it unclear, I guess is what I'm trying to say, it just causes a lot of confusion, and it's just not a good place to be. So just in a loving way, tell your spouse whatever it is that is on your mind, because they are not a mind reader. And I don't know why we treat each other like that, but we do. It's kind of a work in progress, but
I think it's just an ease thing, or maybe lazizness.
Yeah,
is a better word.
Yeah.
Because it would take a little more work to kind of get your point across. It's like, whatever. She knows. Yeah.
That's good.
The same kind of goes. I think one of the things that comes up is I don't really need to say I love her. She knows. And I put a roof over her head. I bought her flowers last year for the anniversary. She knows she knows I care about her. That's another one. Like she's not really reading that all the time. So make sure you say it. But yeah, and in particular, we have a ton of examples that we kind of went through, and we'll share a couple of them as kind of our big landmark. One way we didn't share our expectations, one way we did okay, as an example of, maybe you can follow that. But yeah, it's like the other thing you can do is don't take it too far that direction too. Like, voice what your expectations are, kind of voice your thoughts, but also, you might not want to be like a rolling dialogue of everything.
Overshare. That's me.
Or micromanaging like your spouse.
That's good. That's a good point. I'm an oversharer, and I've definitely had my moments of micromanaging, and I've had to really learn to not do that, because it's kind of like, so I learned this from a friend of ours who when her and her husband first got married, he is like me, like do the most efficient way. And that's the way everybody should do it. The easiest and efficient way. And she's going to get the job done. And so he would micromanage her and tell her how to do things. So like when it comes to the dishwasher, he would like direct her on how to do it. And she's like, look, is it getting loaded? Well, yes. Are the things getting clean? Well, yes. Then leave my strategy alone. And it's true.
Yes.
It's true. Like, just walk out of the room, let them do it. They don't need to be micromanaged. They're a big boy or girl. Let them do it. And there's definitely oversharing. And so I tend to beat a dead horse and say the same thing in 15 different ways. And Michael's like, I get it. I love you, but I get it. So I have learned,
for the sake of the marriage, I'll just yeah, I'm nodding. I'm nodding.
I've just had to learn to, rein that in. Just say, formulate a thought, a clear thought, say it, make sure that he hears it and acknowledges it, and just say, okay, that's it. That's all I need to say. I don't need to add anything else. And
that's typically enough to kind of get everything moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
So, and this is not a quick fix, y'all. It's a years-long thing a lot of times. If you don't take that long, congratulations, you're better off than me. But I definitely tend to just assume things are known and like under communicate. That's, I think, my curse particularly. But I feel like I've gotten better about that.
You have.
Just like, honestly, it's trial and error. And you kind of arrived at the place we're at now just through many, many, many conversations that go late into the night and beyond.
Conflict
conversations. And eventually you kind of get to a place where like, all right, so last 6 times I did that and kind of skipped that kind of information, and it ended up being a problem. So maybe I'll just like, hey, I'm going to be here after work, or like I'm going to be extra long at this place, or blah, 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 you name it. Conflicts can arise from anywhere, but just kind of like communicate different things.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
All right. And so like I was saying before too, we all bring our own expectations / baggage into the marriage. And a lot of that comes from all of your previous experiences. We all have, well, most of us, not everybody, I guess, but you have your parents that you can observe your entire childhood and kind of see what was their stuff. And you bring that kind of communication into your marriage, you bring tendencies of your own, habits of your own that have nothing to do with your parents. Like, we just all have our own stuff. So I'm coming into this marriage with my stuff. Elizabeth comes in with her stuff. And the purpose is to try to meld those two things together for like maximum success.
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody comes into, no matter how great your life was before you were married, everybody comes into marriage with baggage, because there's always some experience or experiences that shape you. And so we all bring baggage, good, bad, ugly, all that kind of stuff. It all comes with you to marriage. That's just a fact. And so recognizing that, you just have to be aware that, I'm going to have from my childhood how my parents interacted, or how like other relationships, as far as like other friends' parents that I witnessed, like that I thought was good or bad or whatever.
And I'm going to interrupt you real quick. Baggage has such a bad connotation, and that doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
Like just things from your past, both the goods and the bads.
Yes.
So yeah, go ahead.
That's a good distinction.
I don't mean to interrupt.
No, it's good. We all bring something to the table when it comes to our marriage. And so I think it's just really important to recognize that that does happen. And it's not to say that what you bring is like, you should get rid of it all, or you should do one person's and not the others. It's just recognizing it and talking through it and working through it together, because there are some things from your past that may be bad that are really going to affect your marriage, that you're going to need to talk about and possibly seek counseling on. And then you're going to have great things that you bring to the table, and great effective ways of maybe communicating or loving the other person or providing whatever it might be. You're going to bring some great things to the table, and recognizing that too, because I think that labeling that, kind of like with at least with our kids, I like to use like positive reinforcement or like words of affirmation, like, yeah, good job, thanks for cleaning up, so that they feel the excitement of praise when they clean up, so that they'll be more likely to do it again. And so it's when I recognize, or that we recognize, that like Michael brings something great to the relationship, it's like, oh, that really worked for us. Like, that really helped bring us closer together. And so we've recognized it, we've acknowledged it, and like praised it. So we're more likely to repeat that pattern over and over again, as opposed to, well, I thought I was doing something good, but it didn't get any recognition, so I guess I won't do it again. So I think labeling it and talking about it, and if it's a good thing, like words of affirmation, praising it, I think that's really important. And if it's something that's being brought, like a communication style as far as expectation goes, labeling it like, Michael's an under communicator, and he is so much better than he was when we first got married.
Thank you.
A lot better. It's like, babe, you got to tell me these things. I can't help you if you don't tell me these things. And now it's like, very rarely do I ever have to like ask you for any information, I feel like.
That's good to hear, because I didn't realize it was getting that much better. But
yeah, oh my goodness, you're so much better. You're so much better. So
yeah, I love doing this podcast because I get all kinds of praise.
But seriously though, it's like he recognized that he was an under communicator. And so, okay, that doesn't really work that great in a marriage. It really actually causes a lot of issues. So recognizing that, and then saying, okay, how can I be better on a day-to-day scale, and just breaking it down and saying, oh, well, that's probably something I should share with Elizabeth, that type of thing. Another reason why it is good to talk about your expectations. So we talked about, your spouse is not a mind reader. It's a good reason to voice your expectations. We all bring in previous baggage, good, bad, ugly, into the marriage. And so that's another reason why you should talk about your expectations. And another reason is it just kind of lays out the playing field. You just kind of know what you're working with. You understand like the boundaries, like you show your hand essentially. Like, imagine you're playing a poker game, you've revealed your hand. And so if I know what I'm dealing with and Michael knows what he's dealing with, we can actually accommodate the other person because we love them.
Yeah, this kind of tip will make you a very good spouse and a very bad poker player.
Yeah, for sure. Don't do that in poker. Yeah. I'm not liable for you losing any poker games, okay? But
You've never played poker, have you?
Yes, I really enjoy poker.
Really?
We've talked about this.
Oh, man. I skipped that part.
Yes, no, I enjoy poker. It's been a long time since I've played, but I do enjoy poker.
That's good to know.
But yeah, this is just, we talked about, we had actually 3 episodes, a 3-episode series. I think it was in the 20s or 30s of our episodes. I can't remember, but it was all about boundaries. And the great thing about boundaries is that you understand what the expectation is. You understand what your arena is. It's like if you went to go play a sport that you knew nothing about, and nobody told you what the expectations of the boundaries were, you're gonna be horrible. Like if you've never played soccer before and you had no idea that you couldn't just pick the ball up, and you picked the ball up, that would be really bad. So understanding what the expectations are, what the boundaries are, it just levels the playing field as far as how can we have a healthy marriage. And I think when you hide those expectations, it really cripples you and cripples your spouse, because they don't know how to love you if you don't share that.
Yeah, it's super, super important. And I think just because that you voice an expectation, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have automatic harmony and doves and birds singing and stuff in your marriage. There's some pain sometimes with that, because if you're coming at something from very, very different ends, no matter, even if you voiced them, it's like you got to actually hash that out too.
That's a really good point. Like even though you voice an expectation does not mean that now that you've said it, your spouse is going to do it. They're not obligated to do it. It would be lovely if your spouse wanted to love you in that way. However, like, let's just say like your expectation was that your spouse is the one who does the laundry, but your spouse actually really hates the laundry as much as you do. So just because you've said, I can't do the laundry because I hate it so much, doesn't mean that just because you said it first, your spouse is going to do it. Like, it's not like first one to say it doesn't have to do it. That's not really how it works. It's just saying, hey, this is kind of what I grew up with, and I really liked that was the scenario for me. Can we talk about that maybe being a thing? And your spouse has the right to say no. But when they say no, you kind of have to work out how you are going to handle that, take turns at it, since you both don't like it. But that will be, I think, a constant work in progress. If it happens to be laundry and you can find a laundry service, then hey, you're good.
Everybody wins.
Yeah.
All right, so I've been teasing this for a while. One way we didn't share our expectations, and it caused grief between us.
It still does.
We just had to pick one. We put about 50 into a hat and we picked one. Just kidding. So one of the big things that is a big difference between us, we actually have a lot in common and a few things not, but we were raised differently when it comes to how money is spent, just from being in 2 different kind of
social classes.
Like, yeah, I guess so.
This was the truth.
Now, so I'll share a little bit of my history. And I think we've shared this before. If you've been a long time listener, you may have heard this, but it's probably been about 30 weeks or so. So I came from Evans, Georgia, which is like a suburb of Augusta. My dad's a doc. And so we always had a bit of like, I always felt like we had everything we always needed. Nothing crazy though. I feel like I look at some like shows where like a kid's first car is a BMW.
Well, it's not like My Super
BMW.
Sweet 16,
No,
if you
it's
remember that show.
I don't mean to give that
but
impression. It's just like when it came to the basic needs, we were 100% covered and stuff. And Elizabeth came from a much different
here,
zone.
like, so when Michael was of driving age, he got a car. To me, that's like very foreign. That's like a big difference for us. When it came to just like, you go in a store and like, we knew not to ask, can we get such and such or this and that, because we knew there wasn't money to get it. So we just didn't ask. And that's not to say like we were so deprived and all this stuff. It's just like, we didn't ask, because I think when you're kind of said, no, that's just not something we can do right now so many times, you just stop asking, just like I think a normal person would. But
my favorite thing is the cereal rule.
Oh, yeah. Well, milk is expensive. And so you could have as many bowls of cereal as you wanted, but with 1 bowl of milk, Whereas Michael could have as many bowls of milk and cereal as he wanted.
It's like gorge myself on milk and cereal every day. Just kidding.
But there were limits on food and just being as wise as my parents could, and to stretch every dollar, because my dad went back to school, so they're living on loans so that he could go back to school, and my mom is raising 5 kids, and that's just kind of the habit that you got into. So like, I didn't get a car when I was 16. I got a car after I graduated high school and got 3 jobs so that I could like justify having the car and paying for it. And it's just like, it was totally different worlds of how money was spent.
Yeah. And I do have to say also, I was encouraged to get a job at age 15, and I've never not held a job at any point since my 15th birthday. Like even deep into the grad school and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But so I still knew the value of a dollar, and they instilled good work values in us.
Sure.
But when we came to our own marriage, kind of coming from those 2 different backgrounds and not really initially talking about that a whole lot.
No, we didn't.
So for me, it'd be like, I'd go out to, hey babe, can you, Elizabeth's like, hey, can you go to Target and grab whatever? Say it's chips and salsa. I'm like, sure. And I go get chips and salsa and a Blu-ray or something like that. And it's like, that Blu-ray was $26. I was like, yeah, but it's a movie we like. And it's like, it's not in the budget. I'm like, So it's like the extra stuff kind of piled up, and we're, single income house, and Elizabeth's raising the kids and homeschooling them and stuff. So we got to kind of tighten the purse strings a little bit. And I was just kind of like coming from like, well, that safety net or whatever. And it's like, oh yeah, you don't really have that anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, I just have a mindset of how you spend your money differently. And we also like view kind of splurges differently.
I'm like Tom Haverford.
For sure. Treat yourself.
Treat yourself 2020.
Which is not bad to treat yourself. I'm not saying like we never spend any money and do that sort of thing, but it's like we just view how money is spent so differently, and we never talked about it. And it has been the source of a lot of conflict for us. And that's something that we continue to work through. Not kidding, just the other week we had a fight about it. Because we just
That's a big one.
Because we view it differently, and then communicating about it differently. And so it's hard. It's hard, but we have to acknowledge that we come from different backgrounds when it comes to money. And that's not to say that one is superior than the other. We just have to know, like, this is our family unit. And so we have to learn how does the view of money function within our family unit, and how do we biblically honor that as well?
Exactly. And you hear all the time, money is a major, major cause of divorce and strife in a marriage. So that's one place you've got to be on the same page, because you can't create it out of nothing. You have what you have, and that's it. So Make sure you're honoring each other and honoring the Lord through those purchases, and you're of the same mindset of it, because it's a big deal.
Yeah.
So we've come a long way. We have a much more open dialogue. We've been through some budgeting programs. We're big fans of You Need a Budget, YNAB. And there's a million tools you can use, but the big thing is just you're going to come at it from potentially really different spots, but there is hope in that. There is a solution as long as you're willing to both work for it.
Yeah. So that was one way that we didn't share our expectations. And it has really, for 9 years, guys, that's been every so often it will creep back up because we have work in that area, which is not a bad thing, but we need to be committed to working in that area. And one way that we actually did share our expectations, and this was something that I shared because this was something that I felt like I needed. Again, Michael was not obligated to say yes, but because he loves me so well, he said, yes, I will do this. I feel like it's really important. And I think you also over time were like, yes, this is an important thing to do as a married couple.
But yeah, I would have definitely pushed harder if I didn't believe in it too.
Right.
It's one of those things where, is it my first choice? Not necessarily, but is it a hard sacrifice? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
So it is,
And so the thing that I voice with him is like, I just think it's vital that we go to bed at the same time.
Or get in bed at the same time.
Well, yes.
Is more accurate.
Get in bed at the same time. We don't have opposing like schedules. So I understand some people who might have like night shift and day shift, like opposites of each other. That's really difficult. But for us, we operate on the same like day clock. You know, we're both like, he's working during the day and I'm homeschooling and doing my work during the day. And then at night, like getting into bed at the same time is super, super vital to, we believe it's super vital to marriage across the board. And we've encouraged every, other married couples who have listened. It was in an episode. No, it was a Tip Tuesday. That's what it was. We did a Tip Tuesday about that. That has been a really big thing for us. I feel like just having that time at the end of the day to connect, because of the way Michael's schedule has been. While he's been working, he gets up super early. Now, when he was in school, I actually had to get up super early, which was horrible. I did not enjoy it at all. But because we could come together at the end of the night and be in bed at the same time and just connect, and especially like we believe the marriage bed is sacred. And so being able to just be in bed at the same time and just be like, hey, I love you, just have a moment of connection. And hey, if it goes further, it goes further. So you're welcome. But
it does create a lot of opportunities that, like, if you're up reading, gaming, just chilling, vegging out, whatever you might be doing, if your wife's in the bed kind of getting ready to sleep and you're chilling for another 2 more hours or something, you've completely missed each other in that opportune time, number one time for intimacy, fantastic, no distractions, time to catch up on the day. How are you doing? How'd you do? That kind of stuff. You're just leaving it all on the table if you don't at least attempt to be together in that bed at the same time at night.
Yeah.
Now, this was not my first, or it wasn't, I won't say it wasn't my first choice. It wasn't my natural inclination because we have me and Elizabeth have pretty different clocks internally. I could stay up till 2 without blinking an eye a lot of the times. Not so much anymore now that I'm 33, but used to. But since kind of really working hard towards this particular point, we have found that it helps a lot with connection. And that's not to say I'm actually laying down in the dark, just
twiddling your thumbs.
She's dead asleep. I'm like, we're in bed, we're talking a little bit, but then she might roll over and I'll read on my Kindle for another hour. But we at least made an attempt to connect at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And we're having conversations and stuff.
Yeah. And I will say, because we did an episode recently about that one time that we weren't having sex, because we come and we connect and like we're coming into the bed at the same time, that has actually facilitated a lot of times of like sexual intimacy connections for us, which is huge because after this episode, go back and listen to that one. And every married couple goes through that a season or 2 or 3, or maybe a lot more than that, where you are just not physically connecting with your spouse. And if we're not, like, if Michael and I were not getting in the bed at the same time, when are we going to do that? We got 3 kids running around. It's not just something that happens in the kitchen anymore, or like in the living room.
Yeah. And I'll share with you guys. This lady right here is not a morning person, so it ain't happening in the morning, that's for sure.
Yeah. So it's when we need to, like, when I say we, like Michael and I, we've got to create those moments where there is a big possibility where that is going to happen, because we are tired at the end of the night. We have 3 kids and we are working every night. And so we've got to help facilitate that sort of connection whenever we can. And that, to me, that's why I'm so passionate about married couples getting in the bed at the same time, because I just think it's so vital.
Yeah. And again, it's not all about getting sex every time, but just like you will for sure grow closer.
Yeah.
Even through small 5-minute conversations before she totally just, out to sleep. But it's like making an attempt every single night, and that will bear fruit for sure. Mm. Also, another great thing to do at the end of the night, obviously, is to pray. Yeah. Kind of like wrap up your day and just be like spiritually connected to. That is a very, very good thing to do. I encourage you to get into that habit as well.
Yeah.
which we are not even close to perfect about. But it's like when you do that, when you do have a season of doing that
regularly,
lot, it's pretty awesome. So check it out.
Yeah.
So that's all we have for tonight, except challenge.
Our challenge.
So in the next 7 days, I bet you didn't see that coming. Share an expectation with your spouse. So it could be a big one, could be a little one. And as part of that conversation, we want you guys to have a conversation. Where are you coming from with that? Like, and maybe analyze for yourself and also be open to your spouse analyzing for you. What like past experiences or exposures led you to that expectation? Money.
That's good.
Sexual frequency, spirituality, like child rearing. Everything is on the table. So please, please, please have that conversation. It will be good. There will be a positive result from that. Please don't fight.
No, that's good though to like kind of talk about where did it come from, because that also helps you learn more about your spouse. Michael and I learn new things about each other all the time.
Yeah, she likes poker apparently.
See, we learned something new today. But it's a good way to see where they're coming from, where their heart is, and don't just say like, "Hey, I expect you to be in bed when I get in bed." It's like, here's why this is important to me, and allow them to respond to it, to talk about it. And here we are again saying how important communication is. If you've been listening for a while, you know we talk about how important communication is in like every episode. So don't underestimate the power of communication, healthy communication. And that's all we have for you today. Thank you guys so much for coming week in and week out to listen to Marriage Talks. We are so thankful for you. We love you guys, and we will see you for next week's episode. Bye.
See ya.